All right, folks, welcome to another episode of Rising Tide, where we here at Raconteur Press try to raise the tide for everybody by shining the spotlight on independent authors and publishers um, who feel the same way we do. Today's guest is J.F. Holmes of Canon Publishing. John, if you'd introduce yourself, please.
Sure. Real quick, my real name is John, but don't look up John Holmes on the internet because you'll be surprised. I publish under J.F. Holmes. I've been writing for about a decade now. I got 20-something books out. And then about 4 years ago now, I started Canon Publishing, just kind of so I had a separate business entity other than myself as a person. And then I started writing. A couple authors came to me and said, "Hey, I'm interested in writing." I said, "Well, let's do this then. Let's run with the company." So now Canon has 4 or 5 series out, and we have probably 6 or 7 guys working with us. I'm not going to say they work for us because everybody bounces from publisher to publisher to publisher, right? And we're not a big Hollywood studio with a contract that says you produce this or else, right?
Yeah. You may not go to anybody else.
Yeah, that's. I mean, obviously, if they want to work with us, great. But so there's 6 or 7 guys. A lot of them are military veterans, some are not, and primarily we focus on military science fiction and military stuff. But we're expanding. We have a couple fantasy novels coming out this year, and Netflix just called me tonight actually and said that they want to pick up one of my series for I think it was $11 million advance. I'm just kidding. I wish.
Hey, you dog.
Someday, right?
Nice though, right?
Yeah. That'll probably be the last you guys see of me for quite a while. So, we're doing okay.
What are some of the series you have out?
Okay, sure. So there's my original series, Irregular Scout Team 1, which is post-apocalyptic zombie series. I was watching The Walking Dead one night, and my wife said, "Quit complaining about the lack of military in the show and go do something yourself." And I started writing, and it's actually I wrote 11 books in that series. I'm actually re-releasing them now. The theme behind it is post-apocalyptic, but the military in the U.S. still exists in the Pacific Northwest. So how do you take back the country? Well, you send the people out who know how to survive in that environment, right? So it's kind of like the old Indian scouts that were hired as civilians to go with the military back in the
right. Yeah.
So that did pretty well. I mean, actually, it was my favorite characters. That, and then after that, we have Fey Wars, which is my friend Lucas Markham hates Tolkien's elves and he thinks they're a bunch of buttheads. So he said, "What if he had an imagine how would magic work on our military?" And I said, "Great, let's roll with it." I wrote the first book. He wrote the second book. We've got 4 out in that series. Basically, the elves lived and the Fae lived on Earth up until about 2,000 years ago when we kicked them out. And now they're back, and their magic is that much more powerful. But we have technology. So I'll give a hint. It doesn't go too well for us because. All right. Why else? It would be a very short book if we just kicked their asses all over the place. Right.
Well, yes.
So we have 4 books out in that, including a really good anthology, and there's 2, 3 more in production right now. We have our Fallen Empire series, which is a universe built to allow authors to write with their own books in there. There's no overall plot line. We just built the universe. Yep. And we said, I love David Drake's Hammer Slammers, right?
Who doesn't?
Yeah. And I'm like, you know what? 27th century mercenaries, and Lucas and I also both happen to be big history nuts, right? So I modeled it on an alien civilization conquered Earth 500 years ago, but it's falling apart now, just like the Western Roman Empire fell apart. And you have all these subject races that are kind of getting out on their own, and there's civil wars and stuff like that. And then afterwards, after the wars have kind of died out, you've got millions of soldiers who, what do you do after the war? You do what you know. You go become a mercenary, right?
Right.
They're similar to post-colonial Africa also in the 1950s. A lot of Germans running around Africa in the 1950s,
Thanks for that.
Yeah. So there's that. And then Shane Grice has he has a series called The Line, which is set in the same universe as my zombie killer stuff, my regular scout team.
Oh,
Shane,
okay.
yeah, Shane's an infantry officer, right? Mechanized infantry. And I always wanted somebody to write from that point of view. I wrote about the scouts. I always write about small units, small teams, small groups of people.
Mm-hmm.
He took it and wrote the same exact timeline, so to speak, same world, but set on the other side of the continent. And it's the 1st Infantry Division fighting their way out of the apocalypse, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's been doing really well. And Shane also has a series we republished it. It came from Eric Flint's Ring of Fire Press. And when Eric passed away last year or 2 years ago, Shane got
Is
the
it
rights.
1632 or something else?
No, it's something else. It was a series that Shane had written. It's kind of like space opera, future stuff. There's a rebellion, and the monarch and their family and their remains of their fleet flee to what they thought was a backwater, unpopulated former colony world from like 2,000 years ago. And they get there, and there's a thriving like 1950s technology, human culture, right? So there's a clash of cultures and wars. The space people have the technical edge. The people down on the planet have the numbers, and there's politics, and good series. And we just republished it, did a lot of editing to it, and 3rd book's coming out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, soon. And then we've got a bunch of one-off books that are floating around out there. So probably we got about 20 something books out right now. We don't hit the 1 book a month schedule or 1 book every other week schedule. Some publishers do, right?
Ouch.
No, nothing on you, not at all.
Well, I don't.
Like Lucas Markham. Lucas, he has 3 books out in his Valkyrie series, which is a 25th century medevac unit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lucas is a major in the Army Reserves as medical officer, and he had to go someplace hot and dusty for a year. And so
Kind of put a crimp, didn't it?
What's that? Yeah. Put that on. Yeah. So, but Valkyrie is a great series. I like it. Some of the books you publish, you're like, oh, this is pretty good. Other books that you publish as a publisher, you sit down, you're like, wow, I want to read this, so
right.
I follow Valkyrie pretty well. And then we've got a number of fantasy books coming out. I could talk about what we're doing over the next year or so, but everything is, if it happens, as always, right? So people get held up, or all of a sudden they're like, hey, I got a manuscript, or so we've got 1, 2, 3, Copley, LaForce. We got about 8 books lined up for the rest of the year. Just getting them out when they get out it's always a struggle. So
right.
Yep.
Now, if I remember correctly, you are retired artillery.
What?
If I remember correctly, you're retired artillery.
What?
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
I did 22 years in the military, 4 years regular Army, 18 years National Guard. A lot of it was artillery stuff. I also worked division plan staff and stuff like that. Between my 4 years active Army back when I was younger and much skinnier, and after 9/11, after getting activated for a bunch of stuff, because I was in New York Army National Guard, I got like 13 years total of active duty time, 22 years total altogether. And now I work for a government agency, and it is boring and doesn't do any special operations stuff. I am not a mercenary. I am not a contractor for the CIA or anything like that. I am in human resources, and
loving it.
Oh yeah, I love it. It's all the exciting thing I ever wanted in my life. But you know what? You get to a point. I'm 55 years old. I don't need that much excitement, and it's a good paycheck. So, and the thing I do, I work for the VA, and I help take care of my fellow vets, and I'm very proud of that. So,
that's well done.
Yeah, and
so does that military experience? You're doing a lot of mil sci-fi. When people submit stuff to you, does it have to be dead nuts on, or do you give them wiggle room?
Well, it depends on the writing. Okay, so I get a lot of submissions. Uh, the concept is great, right? Right up our alley. And again, we're trying to diversify. Um, but the writing, and I'm sure you've seen this plenty of times, the writing isn't just up to snuff, right? You
Right.
you you have to have a talent for being a writer, right? And then you have to put it in a ton of hard work too. You know,
You have to work your craft.
yes, yes, absolutely. If somebody has promise and has that talent, we'll sit down with them. Mike Morton is actually a really good plot editor.
Mhm.
I help work on building universes. We have Bill Irwin, who's a retired Army colonel, does our line editing, right? But very much so, if somebody has the talent and they're willing to work on stuff, we'll run with it. It doesn't have to be military science fiction. Dan Kemp actually has a contemporary military thriller, I guess you would call it,
Mhm.
about a semi black ops civilian contractor, right? And put that out a year ago, and he's very slowly been writing the last one, the next one, right? Dan works full time also, but Dan's got some really good stuff. And he wrote and wrote and wrote. And I said, okay, that was great because you already had the full manuscript last time. This is what I want to see in the next one: more action, less exposition, less talking about your gold watch and the girls that you're meeting and stuff like that, and a little more, a little faster paced, right? Uh, sometimes the people that own the universes, like say I own Fallen Empire, right? Somebody will
Mhm.
come to me and say, well, I want to do this. And I'm like, well, it doesn't really fit in there. So thanks, but no thanks, right? As long as you can color within the lines, then you're free to color whatever stuff you want to do, right? Uh, I have Shane's zombie series isn't always completely copacetic with mine, but that's okay. It's his take on the whole thing, right? As long as he follows the major timeline, then everything else can be kind of explained away, right? And he writes very well, and I don't have to sit there and cross your T's and dot your I's. So it varies by author, and I'm always willing to give a new author a chance. That's actually kind of funny you asked that because I've had to learn not to invest a whole lot of time in people that don't have what it takes. I'm not trying to pick on anybody, but I've had to learn to tell people, hey, no, we just can't do that right now. We can't handle it. Or I'll give some critique and say, this is how you should be doing things, I think, because everybody's different.
Right.
Uh, this is how you could be doing things better. And then if they come back to me, they say, hey, look, I rewrote everything. Okay, cool. You got the chops. Let's see what you got. A lot of 99% of the times they'll be like, well, my stuff's the greatest thing on earth. And you don't know what you're talking about. Okay, good luck, buddy. Yeah. So,
Self-publishing is a thing.
yes.
Um,
And I'm
do
happy to
you
help people
find,
how to do it.
do you find a lot of new authors can't get off the 10,000 foot view of the world they've created? They've got this lovely 10,000 foot view, and they can't get down in the weeds and actually be interesting.
At times, yes. I always tell people that what tells the story is your characters, what
Right.
they do, how they act, how they interact with each other. The action drives the characters drive the action, right? And you may have a J.R.R. Tolkien or what's his name from Game of Thrones, George Martin.
George Martin.
Yeah, you may have built a world that complex, but if your characters are kind of suck,
If
I
it
mean,
if it reads like an encyclopedia article.
yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, I had somebody send me recently like a techno thriller about war in the near future, and both Mike and I looked at it and we're like, "This is great for the technology, but it was the technology driving the story.
Right.
Characters were kind of just there to go through the motions, right? It does not make a good book. Maybe for some people it does. The other thing I get a lot of is gun porn because I write military stuff, right? I'm sure you get it too. Okay, right? It's 3 pages of I hand loaded my 5.56 and it has a muzzle velocity of blah blah blah, and it just That's great. Some people love that stuff. It's just not for us. You write good characters, and we'll take care of you. So
Yeah, characters in action.
yeah.
So, what are you looking for in canon publishing going into the future? What are you looking for the future?
Well, I did mention that Netflix contract that I
Right.
said no. Right now, we're just trying to expand our audience and trying to break out of our little niche market, right? Because military science fiction is great, but it's a small market, right? Um,
It's an oversaturated market.
it is oversaturated, and that's why we take our time putting out products at our pace, not just toss them out there. I'm not saying the guys that write very fast aren't good. I mean, Rick Paltrow writes great stories, and the guy's a machine, right? He just churns out a book a month, right? Those are great. Others have seemed to have suffered in the process of trying to put so much product out there. And yes, self-publishing is easy. You can set up a company, you can set up yourself, you can just start throwing books out there. And then the other thing is now we're running into AI starting to write books, so
Ugh.
yeah, I know. Well, we were talking about this last week, weren't we? Like, you and I were going back and forth about what place we were in for our anthologies.
Yes.
1 and 2 were like "Beat Me, Daddy" or something like that, right? And
Well, the thing about it is what's insulting about that is not even AI. It's
No.
just bot generated. It's bot generated. They use the same cover.
Mhm.
And it's the fantasy shorts anthologies is the worst.
Yeah, I know.
They run a minimum of 50 out of the top 100 are the same 3 covers.
Yeah, basically, and it
And
kills it kills the
yeah,
industry. It really does.
and, well, I could, boy, that's a soapbox. I
Yeah,
usually spend Saturdays going down. Saturdays at work, they don't mind if I log on the internet. I'll spend Saturdays going down reporting every one of them.
yeah.
And I'll have a cut and paste paragraph complaint. Paragraphs of why this is.
Does it do any good? You think?
Not that I can tell. Not that I can tell.
Do you feel better?
Sort of.
Yeah.
Well, I get annoyed. I see folks like you and us,
Yeah.
and some other, hillbilly with 3 ravens and other folks, and they're down in the 30s and 40s in the new releases.
Yeah.
Where if this bot generated same 3 titles uploaded 7 at a time over a 4-day span of time, if they weren't there, they'd be in the top 10s.
Absolutely.
And you and I both know the algorithm. The algorithm goes off how high you are.
Yeah.
Amazon buying algorithms. So if you're down in the 50s because there's 48 different versions of the same cover ahead of you,
yeah,
you're missing out.
You're not going to get noticed. You're not.
Yeah, and you miss out on the algorithm. You're missing out. Everybody says, "Well, it doesn't hurt you." Yes, it does.
It does.
It does. If you're number 50 when you could have been in number 20, that's a problem with the Amazon algorithms. It annoys the crap out of me.
Or even if you just look at the top of the page and you don't bother scrolling down, you might be just under, but there's 20 crap ahead of you. You might be 21, but when people go look, they're not going to see you. So
or something that was pointed out. I had a gentleman when I first noticed this because he said that one of our books would come out, and it was the first Rita's first Moggies in Space, which is fluffy cats and space stuff.
Yeah.
Came out, and he sent his teenage daughter looking for it, and it was in fantasy.
Yep.
She got to the first 20 and bailed. She never got to where Moggies was because it's cleavage and sound bites from bad sound bites from a porn for a title.
Basically,
so,
yeah. Can I present for our customers so they can kind of see what's going on here?
Of course. Please do.
Yeah, let's look at new releases for fantasy anthologies, right?
Yeah. Fantasy anthologies is the worst.
Yeah, which, by the way, I'm beating you again. No, just
For those of you, while John's calling that up, for those of you who don't know, John and I have a very friendly rivalry. He's got an excellent anthology out for his high caliber anthology, which was a contest winners. Very good anthology. And he and I are in a friendly competition of who's ahead of who.
Yeah, it's for fun in games. But
Oh yeah,
so if you can see this, what Shane and I or I'm sorry, what Ian and I are complaining about is this number 3 in new releases is The Sea God's Fertile Bride, right? By Jade Swallow. Really? Number 5 is Dirty Sex Taboo. It's just and they're all crap. They really are. And here we are at number 4 because it's awesome. And here you are at number 9. Sorry. But uh, so that means somebody bought one more copy of the book. But here's the same exact covers like Ian was
yeah.
talking about.
The
There's
same.
4
Yeah.
of them, right? So, and here again, same exact cover, right? So yeah, it does damage us a lot. And I really wish Amazon would just, you know, do something about it, right? And it's also one of the reasons why I don't do anthology so much. Because I hate paying royalties out over extended periods of time, so I just pay people up front, right? Because
Okay.
it's just more paperwork, and I screw things up sometimes. So I buy the stories outright, and also I haven't my high caliber anthology had a purpose to it. You were asking me what we have up next, what we're planning next, right?
Okay. Yeah.
We put this we're going to do that once a year in order to find new writers. Now, surprisingly, I made an open call for fantasy and science fiction and military stuff, and I got predominantly fantasy novels. So obviously, that's a bigger genre, right?
Okay.
Um, and the top 4 guys, Brian Gifford, I know he's been writing something for us for a while. He's working on a Fey Wars book. Not why he got picked at number 3 with his short story, because all the things were done blind judging by Case or Marissa Cedar Sanderson, Bill Irwin, and Jamie Ibsen, right? So we sent no names, no titles, just people who are familiar with the business and good judges, and they picked them out. But the other 3 for number 1, Kevin Harris, number 2, Sam Robb, and number 4, Steve Vissel, they're all writing books for us based on what they wrote. Okay, they're going to expand their stuff into new novels. So I was looking for people who can write. Yeah. So that we can have that back stable of good authors who are producing stuff for us well. So that was the point of the high caliber stuff. And then the rest of the year is going to be got Jonathan LaForce coming out with a book. I don't know how to categorize it because it's a military novel set in Afghanistan in like 2015. It's a female British engineer unit, all females, who gets assigned a U.S. Marine artillery battery as their security. And of course, hijinks ensue, right? But it's also got a lot of combat in it and stuff like that, right? So we have a mix of ongoing series and new stuff that we're trying to introduce. We have The Sword of Destiny. It's about a college professor who inherits I'm not going to call it possessed, a sword with a spirit in it that leads him to combat bad guys, and they get involved in a college that's just a front for fighting demons and stuff like that. Like I said, outside our wheelhouse, but if you don't thrive and look for the next thing, you're going to fall into dust, right?
Yes.
So we're going to start writing romance novels with like 90 to 100 pages with pre-generated AI covers, and we'll start making money. All right. I'll see you at LibertyCon. I'll have Karen dress up as a romance cover artist. No. So,
She'd kill the both of us. So are you currently looking for new authors, or in the rest of the year, or is that an upcoming thing?
I'm always open to it. Anybody that turns down looking at new work is kind of a fool, honestly. I mean, You never know what you're going to find. The problem is keeping up with the production schedule, right? So, like Kevin Harris, Kevin actually lives like 40 minutes from me, so I actually met with him personally. He's like, "When do you want the book by?" And I said, "Before the end of the year." And just a look of relief on his face. Next month or something. He's like, "Okay, cool, right?" I said, "Listen, Kevin, I want you to write well, I want you to build your universe well. I want you to have something that you are well immersed in. I want us to work together to make sure your plot's well, right? I want good work out there. I don't want let's rush it, let's get it out there, right? So,
Okay.
but in the meantime, if somebody sends me something great, like I had a guy send me a post-apocalyptic, typical, I'm an ex-marine and I survived the apocalypse in Texas, and now I'm going to rule the world, kind of thing, right? Not, but still a sympathetic character, not a butthead, right? And he's like, "Hey, I got these 4 books I wrote." I'm like, "Okay, cool. Let me see them." And I'm like, "Hey, all right, cool. Let's roll." Uh, I'm not going to turn that down. I mean, it's just a matter of finding how to fit them in the production schedule, right? And then also, we don't want our quality to suffer. We want to keep engaged with our artists and the authors. It's kind of much more almost like a family business, and you're the
Mhm.
same, right? I know you
Mhm.
guys have your North Texas crew down there, and um, actually did think for a minute about handing that guy over to you and say, "Listen, you're from Texas. I know somebody from Texas, right?" But then I was like, "No, this is actually too good to give to somebody else." So no offense, all right.
No, none, none
Um,
taken. I'd do
no,
the same.
yeah, I get people who I sometimes are not in my wheelhouse,
Mhm.
and I'll call up Hillbilly and I'm like, "Hey, what's up, man?" And he'll be like, "What the hell you want?" um, he did that to me yesterday morning. I was driving to get a bagel. And he's like, "What the hell you doing?" I'm like, "Leave me alone, man. It's 8 o'clock in the morning."
What the
Um,
hell?
no, he was talking to Brandy and seeing about room cons or room parties at Liberty Con. But
Oh
um,
God.
yeah, but I'll
Oh,
pass.
hangover starting already.
Oh, I know. He's like, "You want to do one?" I'm like, "No, I don't want anybody in my room. Sorry." So I will hand over. He does a lot more fantasy stuff or urban
Mhm.
fantasy stuff, horror kind of stuff than I do. So I will send something over him. 2 years ago, I was working on the JTF 13 series, right?
Mhm. It's
Which
one
I
of
don't know.
his. Is it
Well,
one of his or Chris Kennedy's?
it was mine. Okay.
Oh, okay.
I did a sci-fi anthology like 4 or 5 years ago, and Alex Pisecki wrote a story about Marines fighting a dragon in Iraq. I'm like, this is good stuff, right? If Alex would stop writing on his cell phone when he's sitting in the North Texas oil fields, he would be a great writer. He writes his stories on his phone. So um,
Oh,
we put out an anthology, JTF 13, and it was and I put out 1 or 2 books in it, and then I said, this is too much for me. I don't want to. I I just started working for the VA, and that turns your brain into complete mush, right?
much.
So I called up Hillbilly. I'm like, hey, listen, I got like 3 or 4 people writing stories. Are you interested in it? And he's like, hell yeah. So I started that one. I actually designed a logo, which was pretty cool.
Mhm.
And we put out the anthology, and it was pretty good. And he took it over and he runs with it. So I'll send submissions over to him if I think it's more up his line. And yeah, if I get short stories or anything, you do just anthologies, right?
For now, 2025 will probably start once we know that everything works,
Yeah.
and we'll branch into novels. I don't
Okay.
know if that'll be early or late 2025. Just whenever we figure it all works.
Well, here's the difference between you and I. You're very methodical, it seems, and very organized, and you have a great staff with you. I bounce off the wall, and I'm like, oh crap, I forgot to do that 2 weeks ago, and damn, we got to put this book out in 2 weeks, and it's been sitting in the G drive for 2 months now, waiting for my final edits and stuff. So I'm slowly building a staff of people who can just say, just go sit in the corner and sign things, and then we'll take care of everything else, right? My friend Brian Mays, who I've been friends with for like 15 years now, he saw that I was looking for a marketing guy. He's like, hey, I do that part time. Give me some money and a cut of the profits, not much. And he has taken our social media presence and like quadrupled it in the last 2 months.
Well
So
done.
yeah, I mean, you learn in law enforcement, and you were in the military too, right? Weren't you?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
you learn to find the right people to do the right job, and then you just manage them doing the job. Not, you manage what tasks need to go to them, and you empower them to go do the job, and you just check back on them and say, "Hey, how's it going? Do you need guidance? what ideas you got that you want to bounce off me, something like that. But if they're doing the job, you just let them roll with it, right?
Yep.
Bill Irwin is doing our line editing, and he catches stuff. My Zombie Killers book has been looked at like 15 times over the last 10 years, right? My first book. And he hands it back to me. He's like, yeah, I found this. I'm like, oh, all right, thanks, Bill. Cool. He used to be a PAO for the Army. So he's very up on that stuff. So finding the right people to do the right job is what you need to do, right? Unfortunately, I live in the dead zone of science fiction. I live in the Northeast. So there are no cons up here that are worthwhile. And it's kind of hard to have that motivating, like when we met at MarsCon,
Right.
great time, right?
Mhm.
I'm not sure if you're going back there, but it was kind of like LibertyCon East a little bit, right? Or when you go to LibertyCon, you meet everybody and you get all pumped up and everything like that. Then you go back to the wasteland of the Northeast, and it's like there's no conventions. Everybody that goes to conventions is like 103 years old, right? And they're like, yeah, I used to know Isaac Asimov. Some of the ladies are like, yeah, we hooked up. It's like, no, come on, right? Really? So fortunately, Marissa Wolf and Casey Etzel just moved up to the Great White Northeast. Yes.
I'm jealous.
Yeah. So we were hanging out with Marissa a couple weeks ago, and we're going out because Karen and I go to Boston a lot, and we're going to go hang out with them end of April. And not that we're going to write together or anything like that. It's just nice to have fellow authors who know the game.
Understand?
Yes. I'd love to hang out with Hillbilly. We're really good friends, but he's in Tennessee. So and then when we meet at conventions, he's hustling faster than anybody I ever met in my life. I'll sit down and be like, "Hey, Hillbilly," you're like, "Gotta go talk to somebody." Bye, and he'll zip by, right? So it's hard. You gotta keep that motivation going.
I swear I'm going to clothesline him just to get him to sit down and talk to me at LibertyCon.
I know, but you know what? He's hustling. He does what he needs to do.
Oh, he's hustling well. He's doing good.
Yeah. So I do appreciate your whole rising tide thing. Like, some people in the business look at it very much as like my company, and it's my company, and I want to succeed at the expense of everything. I really think that there's enough business for all of us. There really is, right? And helping each other out is, when I get that Netflix deal, I'm going to be like, hey, by the way, while I'm sipping a margarita in California and talking to the Hollywood exec, I'm like, you might want to talk to the guys over at however the heck you say your last name or your company.
Raconteur.
Raconteur, right?
No,
what does that mean anyway?
Storyteller.
Oh, okay. In what language?
Well, it comes from French, but it's English.
Oh.
Raconteur is just a wandering storyteller.
Okay, makes sense. All right, cool.
But I don't understand the. Jonna has a saying that the pie is pretty much infinite.
Yeah.
There are enough readers out there. I don't understand the crab bucket mentality, and I'm trying to break that. So
there's a lot of things I could say, but we're all family, and we all know each other, and I think some people just look at things a lot more business-like and maybe they're better off for it. I don't know. I think one of the big problems is there's such a gap between where we are, right? And I know some people do better than I do, not so much, but like Atheon, I know they're getting pretty big, right? They do really well, but they're not Simon and Schuster. Okay. No. They're a long way from it. Right. I don't know where I was going with that. It's just, there's no middle ground, it doesn't seem to be like a middle ground for publishing anymore. And I think some people are trying to hit that middle ground, and maybe they don't see it as like, I don't know, as like you say, rising tide, right? The more people see our work, the better off we're going to be.
Well, and I strongly think that sometime in the near future, there's going to need to be a coalition of small independent publishers to stand up to, say, Amazon or somebody else and say, hey, we're a coalition of your main mid-list publishers, and you need to stop this, or we need to. And if we've carved out little individual fiefdoms, Amazon's not going to listen to us.
No, they don't
If,
care.
if we've got if we've got 20 or 30 mid-list small publishers, that you start bringing some weight.
Yeah, when you're like, hey, listen, collectively, we're responsible for like $10 million in sales, right? Between the 40 of us or whatever, right? They're going to listen because that's money, and that's what they listen to, right?
Well, we were looking at the stats this morning, and you, me, three Ravens, and some other of our friends, we're holding down like 13 or 15 of the top 100 paid anthologies.
Really?
Yes.
And then 2/3 of those are crap anyway. So,
well, in science fiction,
no, yeah, I know that's got. I'm talking fantasy.
Well,
science fiction,
I don't even, because I try to stay away from fantasy right now.
Yeah, I understand.
I still publish it because Moggy's does really well for us, but I don't go checking the paid and the new release top 100 like I do in science fiction.
Right. I learned a long time ago to not. I don't follow my numbers. I'm making money, I'm not losing money, so I don't. Like, when you first get into this business, you're constantly looking at KDP, just look at your sales numbers and stuff like that.
God, yes.
And I finally just like, what I do? I look at the customer reviews just so I can read the 1-star reviews.
Well, if you read them right, you can get a lot of good data out of your 1-star reviews.
I would say 2 and 3-star. The 1-star ones that like tell me I don't understand how the military chain of command works. Okay, dude. I mean, come on. It's stuff like that,
Seriously. But I've gotten some 1-stars that were they hit some really good. They raised some really good points. It's like, ooh,
yeah.
Oh, next one we need to work on that.
Well, in my case, I kept hearing needs a better editor over and over and over. Tells a great story, great characters, needs better. So, yeah, you learn. What am I going to do? I need a better editor, right? So I've gone out and gotten one, and I still get them. Needs a better editor. You're never going to keep everybody happy, right?
No, you're not.
But you do learn. I always tell new authors, don't get dejected by your 2 or 3-star reviews because they actually cared enough to leave a review, right? And you can learn from them. You really can.
Yes, you
can. I think that
if you'll read them with an open mind, a lot of them. Now, there's a famous, when I did the Law Dog Files, there was a famous 1-star review. Great book, great stories. Arrived with cover torn, 1 star.
What do you have to do with that? What? I know. I got one the other day for like a 3-star review for one of the books, and he's like, "This was great, except for this one little thing." I'm like, "So why do you give it 2 stars? I mean, give it 3, give it 4, and then just say, hey, by the way, thankfully Amazon stopped letting us reply to reviews.
I do kind of miss that.
I do sometimes, but then for new authors, I'm like, just don't bother to engage. So one thing, talking about new authors, some of the harder things we've had, one of the things we're judging people on nowadays, I don't say judge, I'm saying you're talking about what we look for in new books, right? You got to be able to sell yourself, right? You have to have a social media presence. You have to pitch your own books. None of us have a budget to send somebody on a speaking tour around the country, right?
No, sure don't.
You have to be willing to set yourself up, build your own email lists, gain a following, right? I have people who come to me and are like, hey, great story. I'm like, do you exist on social media? They're like, nope. Are you willing to? No, I like my privacy. Okay, well, then we're going to have a hard time selling this. Well, you're the publisher. Yeah, we are the publisher, but
we're a small publisher.
Yeah, and also, what happens if you write your book and you want to go work for Rancor? I keep thinking the Rancor from Star Wars.
Raconteur.
Right? I'm like, what happens if you want to go write for them? Like Hillbilly has, like Dave Hensley is writing the Fall trilogy for me, right? Dave's a great guy. He's writing. He just had his first Car Wars book out, right? If Dave goes and writes for Car Wars and doesn't build his own following, right, and then comes to me and writes for me, he's not bringing anything really to the table, right? So just like I'm not beholding you to work directly for me all the time, it behooves you to have your own following because you might wind up tomorrow working for Antheon or Jumpmaster, or what I'm saying. And some people don't get that, right? Why do I have to do that? I'm like, because it's going to help you sell your books. We can only cover so much stuff at one time,
It will
right?
help you sell more books. I
Yeah.
do a thing presentation
Mhm.
for new authors, and I say, okay, you're a new author. That's great. One of the best. Most of hold up your hand if you're an introvert, and everybody, all hands. I say, oh, I got bad news for you guys.
If you're a what?
An introvert. Hold up your hand if you're an introvert.
Oh
Hands
yeah,
go up everywhere. And I'll say, oh, I got bad news for you guys. You're
yeah,
gonna have to go out there and talk to people.
yeah. You got to go to conventions. You got to sit up on the panels. And not for nothing, some of the panels that you and I have been on together, like the no bleep there, they're hysterical, and people remember us sitting up there, right?
Yes,
We
yes,
did
I
the
do.
Ukraine war panel, right? Were you on that one that we did?
I don't think so. I think I missed that one.
All right, so I'm just saying, like, you get out there and you put your face out there, and people are like, "Hey, I'm so and so, your biggest fan from Facebook." I'm like, "Crap," but I don't say crap to their face. I don't know who you are. I'm like, I'll shake their hand. All right, cool, and then I'll probably remember who they are, right? Because people look different between Facebook and even
Well,
on this video, I look a lot thinner than I am. But you have to put yourself out there, and and unfortunately, with today's day and age, you have to be a media presence, and or even failing that, build your email list, or like I talk to my new authors and I say Shane Grice is makes the most money off of us, right? And do you know why he does it? And they're like, I don't know. He writes a good story. I'm like, no, yeah, he does write a good story. Okay. But, um, well, he's makes the most money off of us because I haven't been able to write anything in 2 years. That's, I have writer's block out the ass. But Shane, even with his job, he had a very high placed job in the military, right? Is still posting in 10 different sites a day, right?
yeah,
So,
man's machine.
yeah. So he's out there. His goal is to post in 10 different social media groups or sites per day. And he doesn't always hit that mark, right? But as a result, I wrote a lot bigger 1099 than some of the other guys that work for me, right? You know,
Right.
so and he's not complaining. He's putting the work in. Others I have working for me, they're good authors, but they're just like you said, kind of introverted. So it's hard. It's more of a struggle to
And,
sell. So
and there are more authors are introverts than not. And I say here, like I say on that presentation, y'all are gonna have to get out of your shell, and
yeah,
you're gonna have to blog, Facebook, get out there and interact with people.
yeah,
Now the days where a minimal marketing presence from traditional publishing got millions of bestsellers are long past.
no,
People these days, they want the interactions.
yeah,
One, I, I hold that one of the reasons Larry Correa is so popular is the fact that he interacts every day with his fans,
absolutely.
and that
He's
makes that man a lot of money.
It does. Like, I mean, if you look back in the day, Stephen King, maybe you could write a letter to him. Is he going to write you back? No, right? But I have people that have been fans of my work for like 10 years now who, heck, I know when they're having kids, right? They're like, hey, John, well, at our age, it's more like I know when they're having grandkids, right? So, um, but
Yeah,
but it's like, yeah, and we have our fan groups, right? The Command Post is our fan group for Canon, and there are people who are like, hey, how's everybody doing tonight, right? And we'll have conversations back and forth, or I'll put up a slice of one of my chapters, right? And I'll get
mhm,
stuff like, maybe you need to work on that again, right? So I'm getting instant feedback from the people who read my books, right? Um,
yes,
and it works and it helps, and people feel much more connected to us. On the other hand, I have an author profile and my personal profile. I keep my family life very separate from my author profile. So
yeah,
it's a balancing act. It really is. It is.
yeah. Well, I went for 20 years under Law Dog instead of Ian McMurtry for that reason.
Yeah.
Was still publishing under Law Dog because I built a 20-year fan base for Law Dog
Hmm.
that I'll lose some of them if I switch over to my actual name. So
Right. Right. And I like one of the guys that's new with us is trying to come up with a good pen name because he doesn't want his name out there. And we're all like, you need to do that now. He's like, should I publish a book and figure it out later? I'm like, nope. You need to come up with that pen name right now because we're going to start pitching you as, I think it's Steve Vissel. He's going to go with, I think, SC Vickers, right? Which is kind of a cool name, right? Oh yeah, everybody forget. I just said his name. Forget it. Okay, his name.
And we'll get that. We'll get that in post.
Yeah,
I think or something.
I mean, he's not. He's like not trying to hide undercover or anything.
Right.
Like that. I know you being or law enforcement, you had to be careful with being out there and talking to people. That's one of the things that holds up Dan Kemp's books is we had to go for a DOD review because he works very still as a civilian, but he has a clearance, and you got to be careful with that stuff. So yeah, it takes forever, but whatever, we're cool. So,
you pretty much have to roll a dice with your DOD reviewer too.
Yes and no. Bill Irwin knows the DOD reviewer very good, very well, very good.
There you go.
Do I write much? No. He knows him very good.
I rightly good.
Yeah. So, not saying it turns it around any faster, but we do get good feedback, and they don't take such a red pen to it. So, and that's the other thing. A lot of the people that write for me have security clearances. They have to be really careful what they write. I said, right. Hey, Sean, Shane, why don't we do a Korean, like a fight the Chinese military book? He's like, yeah, no, as soon as I open my mouth up about that, I'm going to get thrown in jail. I'm like, okay, I get it.
Moving on.
Yeah. Next, he's like 27th century. Great. 21st century. No. So, same with Mike Morton. He's got a government job with a security clearance, and he writes in My Fallen Empire. Actually, he's doing Four Horsemen stuff for Chris Kennedy right now, and that's set far in the future, so we don't have to worry about that stuff.
That's good. That's good.
And then
okay, so if people want to submit stuff to you, you do have open calls, right?
We have. We don't have any open calls for anthologies right now. Okay, anybody's free to email us and say, hey, what do you think of this? Right? We have a submit tab on our website, which is kind of pathetic. The website, we're working on it. Just one of those things that has to get done. Always updating the website and coming up with new ideas. What I'm looking for.
What is your website? What is your website address?
Canonpublishing.us, which
Canonpublishing.us.
Yes.
And there's a submit tab on there.
Yes, I will show you through the modern wonders of technology, called sharing a screen. And yeah, so I will share my screen, present. Okay. Okay. So, so you guys, you can see this, right? This is our website.
All right.
Okay.
So canonpublishing.us.
Yes. And yeah, it needs a little bit of work. Okay. We're working on that. But right up here at top is submissions contact. Okay.
Submissions bracket or okay.
Yeah.
Guidelines. Yeah. Outstanding.
Yep. And we're open to anything. I mean, obviously don't step too far outside the, what we currently write.
So military science fiction, fantasy.
Science fiction, yeah, we don't really do horror. Science fiction, thrillers, contemporary thrillers. If you have a great idea for a romance line, and I joke around, but somebody really does, I'll spin off an imprint and actually make some money instead of fooling around with this one.
Well, romance makes the money.
It does. And once you get your business model set up, and I get my business model set up, if you want to combine and launch Canon Couture or romance or something like that, sure, let's go for it.
I say I don't turn up my nose at romance. Those folks make bank.
Formulaic and tropey, but you're right, they make bank. So
they make bank.
Yeah.
So where can we find you, you or Canon in other places other than your website? Do you have a Substack?
Nope. I'm on Facebook as JF Holmes. Anybody's free to send me a friend request. We have Canon Publishing, our Facebook page, which used to be my cartoon page. So I have a lot of followers, but we're slowly sorting through the wheat from the chaff with that one. But so Canon Publishing, and then the Command Post is our fan group. And
Okay.
the best
That's
way
also
to, what's that?
that's also on Facebook.
Yeah, we're kind of dinosaurs, I was told by my 19-year-old I'm not allowed to use Snapchat because I'm too old. Uh, so, um, and some of the guys have individual presences, yeah, presences on like Twitter or X or whatever the heck it is, and some Substacks. But primarily, yeah, you can reach us through Facebook and the Command Post. Great place to interact with people. Shane's got his rally point, which
Oh
is
yeah, oh, yeah.
his friend group, right? Um, and really, the best way to keep track of what we're doing is join our mailing list because, I mean, social media is so fragmented that you really need a one-way thing to do. So go to our website, sign up for the mailing list, and yeah, you're there. All right.
Outstanding.
Okay. How can
Uh,
people follow you?
oh, which right now the best way to follow us is on the Substack. We're working at getting a web page up. It's in the final process of the web page, and then Facebook. I understand that the ladies have a well, what's the picture version of Facebook?
Snapchat? Oh, no, Instagram.
Instagram. I
Yeah.
understand we have an Instagram channel, but I've never seen her. Never
We're on
been
there
there.
too because Facebook links to Instagram. And like I said, I have a media
Oh,
manager now who knows this stuff. He's under 40, so he's okay
oh,
with stuff, right?
his knees still work, don't they?
Yeah, they do. But yeah, and we're at conventions, as you know. We don't get down to Texas, unfortunately, but East Coast stuff we do. All right.
Where what are the next series of conventions you're going to where people can meet you?
Okay, so LibertyCon in June, we'll be there, and we're actually going to have a pretty heavy presence. Shane should be there, depending on his job. Kevin Harris will be there. Mike Morton will not. Brian Gifford will be there. Lucas Markham, hopefully. So we're going to have a pretty good crowd there. Dan Kemp will be there.
Good.
And after that, NASFIC, which is North American Science Fiction Convention in Buffalo in July. And then in October, we'll be at WorldCon Buffalo, which is like a twin convention to the one in Scotland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then there's some other smaller ones that our authors will be at, and we put up a list of where people are going to be. But basically, we try and hit the big ones. Unfortunately, conventions nowadays, you don't sell a ton of books. It's more about just meeting the people, right? And we'd love to get to Dragon Con. I think that would be great, but it's got its pluses and minuses, right? The number one,
Plus, this is 80,000 people.
yes, the minus is that unfortunately my executive vice president of happiness works around the school year schedule, and that's Dragon Con's in September or end of August, so she's not available. And I think that if I went down there without her and she couldn't cosplay, she'd probably not let me back in the house. So you've met Karen, you know yeah.
Karen is a sweetheart. You really married up on that one.
Well, no, because when I go to these conventions, everybody's like, "Where's Karen?" I'm like, "I'm the author here." I'm like, "Yeah, we don't care about you. Okay, where's Karen?" I'm like, "She's running around in costume someplace. Talk to me. Buy my books." "Oh, okay. We'll talk to you later. We'll, tell her such and such stop by."
Oh, I know exactly how that works.
Yeah. So we are plagued by our better halves. So, all right, cool.
Good.
What else you got for me here?
Is there anything? We're coming up on an hour. Is there anything that you would like to tell the audience about yourself or science fiction in general? Any last messages?
Okay, about myself.
Or anything in general? Anything you think needs to get out there?
Okay. I am not a conservative redneck bonehead, as I am called by my liberal friends up here in New York, and nor am I a commie Yankee that I am called from my friends down south. Okay. All right. I am pretty much a middle of the road guy and open to talking about anything. And as far as science fiction, I mean, how much does it cost for a book? $3.99 now on average, right? I blow through that drinking, iced teas from Dunkin' Donuts in like 2 days. So how hard is it to actually go buy a book and leave a review? That's the best thing you can do for somebody.
If I get people to leave reviews, I'd be a happy person.
It is. It's a great thing. All right. Also, we're looking for advanced reviewers. Speaking of that, so if you go to the Canon website and send us one of those contact forms, we'll be happy to send you a PDF a couple weeks at a time in return for you hopefully leaving a review. All right.
Hey, folks, you get to read stuff.
Yes, and hopefully you don't scam us and sell it to Netflix and get an $8 million deal. But no, it's a good way to be in on the loop on things, and we always appreciate feedback, good or bad. So, all right.
Yeah,
cool.
All right, folks. It's been J.F. Holmes with Canon Publishing at canonpublishing.us, correct?
Yes.
canonpublishing.us. Good folks, good friends. We heartily recommend them. If you want to buy their books or write for them, they won't do you wrong, folks. All right.
Yep.
Good to have you on. All right.
Thank you, Law Dog. I appreciate it, Ian. Thank you for inviting me to breakfast the other day. And
you're very welcome.
All right.
You're very welcome.
Anytime, even though I was not awake.
Oh, I know exactly how that works.
Just getting
I will see you at Liberty Con. All right.
All right. We'll catch you there. All right. Have a good night.
And cut.